So I have several questions. The advantage that South Africa has over many Muslim majority countries is that the laws here is, is about equality, and LGBT rights is part of that legislation. Can the Muslims here work with the educational department of South Africa in inserting some of this education of diversity, the concept of diversity, including sexual diversity, in school books? Because I don't think the homophobia is just within the Muslim community in Africa. It's also in South Africa. It's also within outside the Muslim community.
Built into the curriculum is the question of diversity. So the whole idea is that given our apartheid legacy, we need to teach the new generation about diversity because we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. But literally the issue of difference in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity does not get discussed, let alone included in the educational curriculum. So obviously that's something that's a reality and a challenge that we need to address, but it's simply not there. And what I'm trying to explain is that there is a political context as to why it's not there.
I am not sure how the government is working on that in terms of the education. What I'm only aware of is that there is a Commission for Gender Equality. They work on issues of gender, sexual diversity and all that. So they are collaborating with organizations and including schools where they exchange knowledge and ideas, and where they also try to build the capacity of NGOs and public institutions on issues of gender equality, including issues of sexual orientation.
Is there a straight Muslim ally that advocates for you in South Africa?
We do have progressive Muslim organizations for obvious reasons. I'm not going to mention the names, but let me tell you what the challenge is, right? We have progressive Muslim organizations that would challenge the Muslim Judicial Council on the issue of patriarchy. So various struggles have been led where women would enter into the mosque and demand their space. I think there would be a backlash from the religious sector. But they keep pushing the boundaries, and for that you can applaud them. We even have progressive Muslim theologians which are not directly affiliated to, for example, the Muslim Judicial Council. They're unaffiliated. Some of them are even professors at universities, so their income is not derived from the same source that most of these other scholars get. So if a fatwa were to be passed against these progressive Muslim scholars, it wouldn't have a material or economic consequence. So they would literally counter the narrative of the Muslim Judicial Council on, let's say, the question of feminism, and they would come out in support of feminism. But neither the progressive Muslim organizations nor your progressive Muslim theologians, none of them have come out explicitly in favor of homosexuality, and then to use their knowledge of Islam to argue the question of diversity. I don't want to go into the names because this is sensitive, and as soon as I mention a name, it raises all sorts of other questions. But the point that I'm trying to make is that interfaith voice, you find progressive Muslim theologians involved in that, on the questions of social justice. Let me just give you an example. Sanitation, for example, in the townships. Because the state has huge problems with the provision of social services, communities start getting upset and they start burning things down. The only people who's able to calm communities down are people coming from the interfaith sector. So you would have your progressive Christians, your progressive Jews, and your progressive Muslim theologians coming in, calming down the crowd, and then use their moral voice to intercede with the state on behalf of communities. And that's wonderful work. They're really pushing the boundaries on the issues of social justice, feminism, etc. But they all remain silent on the question of homosexuality. When I invited religious scholars to come and address the Forum for Religious Leaders, none of those progressive Muslim theologians even bothered to send me a rejection letter. Explaining why I'm too busy or whatever the case may be. But they did not even bother to do that. So that kind of puts that into context. Certainly we need to push the boundaries, but there are serious, serious challenges. And we recognize that the TSC can't do that work on its own. So what we've done, for example, is we've reached out to an organization called Positive Muslim. It's a progressive feminist organization. They work primarily in the field of HIV, and we work very closely with them. We do have other feminist allies located in universities. And so we do have links with non-Muslim organizations in the HIV as well as in the queer sector. So let me give you an example. We would work with an organization like, I don't think I should mention the name, but they provide counseling and HIV testing. And so when we run our programs, we partner with these organizations because those organizations are simply not available in the Orthodox Muslim community.
From my side, what you said in the Eastern Cape, I come from Port Elizabeth. It's a very, I would say it's a quiet town or whatever, but it's a close-knit family. Everybody knows everybody's thing down there, you understand? And everybody's keeping quiet, from the Maulana, from the Imam, Sheikhs and all those. They don't come confront you and say, you are queer, you cannot come into the mosque or whatever. And for a queer Imam that you were saying, how do I know that Imam is queer unless he's out? Because some of them are hiding their things so intensely that it's actually only the queer that he went with that knows his point. So for now, I think society should accept us for what we are. And they must come to us now to find out where do we stand. You understand? And that is what my fight is down there in Eastern Cape. You talk about the Quran, except when are you going to talk about us? When are you going to find out where we stand in the society? Because we stand everywhere. Because in every second, or I would rather say every third household, there must be a queer person. I can confirm that because I do research on that part. Because you can tell me about what, I will seek one out in your family. If it's in the closet or out of the closet. So that thing that the Imam Maulanas and stuff say, you are there. I know even a queer Imam that is not even out. It is keeping it so secretive that none of the Jama'ah ever down in Eastern Cape knows about it. So if that is there, why are we still here at the bottom as queers struggling to come out there?
In terms of coming out, like you say, there are some respondents, queer Muslim respondents, who also believe that the struggle or the queer agenda should be driven by queer Muslims themselves. They argue that, for example, one of the participants said, you have straight people who have little or no knowledge about queer Muslims being at the front of the struggle against homophobia. The idea is that if you want to be heard, you should shout yourself. It is not to exclude other actors, but it's just to underscore the sense of queer Muslim activists on the issue of sexual diversity and sexual orientation. But the challenge is that there are others who, now the challenge comes back to the issue of coming out and staying in the closet. Because there's a general view that you cannot fight homophobia from the closet. It's something that is very contagious anyway. That you cannot fight homophobia from the closet.
Yes.
So you need to come out first. And when you come out, you need to now start to engage with the network that is fighting against homophobia.
Right.
And then that will result in a critical mass of people, of queer Muslims who are activists and who are standing up for their rights and fighting for Islam which is all inclusive. So it's something that's gonna take, it's a process, because people are at different level of spiritual engagement.
do you work with, say, Desmond Tutu? You know, he's such an advocate for human rights in general, and I know, like, I met him in LA when he was speaking at a church. So, do you work with non-Muslim figureheads on this issue that has tremendous sway for all South Africans?
That's the first thing. In terms of permanent non-Muslim allies like Desmond Tutu, most progressive people claim to love Desmond Tutu because of what he represents. He's been very vocal on the issue of the queer agenda and queer rights. But there is no formal link at an interfaith level between a prominent individual like Desmond Tutu and a religious bodies such as the Muslim Judicial Council. Right? Now there are various reasons for that, but typically at the back of most conservative Muslims mindset is various quotations from the Quran. It says, if you are Nasara and Yahud, you're condemned to the fires of hell. And so you can interact with a Christian. You know, it's okay to interact, go to school, but at the back of the head there's this concept of Muslim superiority that plays itself out. So they would say the scholars would say wonderful things about someone like Desmond Tutu, but it's very rare to find them on the same public platforms because the messages are totally different.
My issue is, for years I've been, when I was a nurse, HIV counseling and testing and gay community, I've always been involved with support groups and everything. So, but now, and as a Muslim, I was a born Muslim, and then for my own reason, I just divorced, and now recently but defending the issue of gay Muslims and that for me is also very important because of the community I work in, and to defend it. But how do I, with very little knowledge of, I don't understand Arabic, in the case I can butcher Arabic Quran of this, but I don't know, I could not understand it. So I defend it with the Lut story. So it's difficult for me, but and I don't know how to do that. But still, what I'm trying to do is, because in Ramadan I was standing in the queue in the shop, and the man said, it was about this gays in the mosque and the Christians, and I never kept quiet in any case, so I just stood in and I said, so who created the Siamese twins? He said God didn't create them. I said, who created the Siamese twins? And cast us a menu, and he said, okay, so God created them too. So that's my, but I cannot convince everybody in that line, you know. So I'm not quite sure what to do or how to go about with not all the knowledge of the Quran that I have.
I would love to think that there are shortcuts to gaining knowledge. Unfortunately, my view is that there are no shortcuts. We do have manuals available. We do have training available. So obviously you can access that, but there's no shortcut to knowledge. Because literally the ulama, for example, under the Muslim Judicial Council, they basically operate as a spiritual mafia. In other words, in order for anyone to be able to provide a tafsir or an interpretation of any verse in the Quran, you literally have to be at the same level of knowledge as an imam. Otherwise, there's no discussion and debate. Afterwards, they will still question your credibility, you know, where you studied or whatever. But if you're not at the level of a religious scholar, there is no debate. And so, unfortunately, in terms of counterposing the narrative of the religious scholars, you would literally have to seek and gain knowledge. And so, my personal view is that there are no shortcuts. There are trainings available, and obviously that's accessible to people who wish to make a use of TIC programs.
Is there a strategic plan or some kind of plan you've got to try and engage these people, particularly the ones that are the MJC, for instance, where they are totally in control and they can bully whoever they want to? Is there a way of creating a platform to engage with them and actually tackle the issue head on.
During our interaction with him on and off over the years, we got this Imam from the Muslim Judicial Council who was part of the interview process to say that if the work of the TIC allows Muslims to come closer to Allah, then the work of the TIC is commendable. That doesn't speak to the issue of tolerance, let alone complete acceptance, but it's a shift away from that fatwa position. So in that sense, it's progressive. My view, and this is not something that we've discussed at the leadership level within the inner circle, but in my experience of attempting to get hold of straight imams to kind of have a debate and a dialogue, and the sleepless nights I've had on that, I begin to realize that I've got a slightly different view from what queer Muslims are saying about that queer Muslims should drive this agenda. Right? So if, for argument's sake, if the queer Muslims were saying, look, we don't really want to be part of this orthodox Muslim community that's rejecting us, we'll form our own queer Muslim community, then why bother interacting with the orthodox Muslim community? So the idea is, if you still want acceptance from them, then at some point in time you're talking about whether it's going to take 100 years or 200 years or 500 years, some level of integration that will take place if there's acceptance. So my personal point of view is that yes, I think queer Muslims should be in the leadership of their own organizations, but literally, in order for this struggle to succeed in the long term, you don't just need straight allies in the Muslim community. You literally need straight Muslims to drive this agenda themselves inside the Orthodox community.